2015, I visited Disney World and spent time at Disney Quest, an indoor amusement park where most of the activities are done through virtual reality. There is an Aladdin game where participants sit on bikes and use virtual reality helmets and try to find treasure before Jafar, the villain, does. This was a fun game, but like me, I feel as though many of us don't know the other uses of virtual reality other than video games. As a mathematics and computer science major, research on this topic was something that really interested me. Though many believe that virtual reality can only be used for video games, virtual reality can be used in psychology to increase the human mind's understanding of perception. Today, I'll be speaking to you about how virtual reality can facilitate life with a phobia, can transform body image, and can relieve symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. To begin, virtual reality has the ability to help people conquer fears and learn to live with phobias. According to Dr. Giuseppe Riva in the British Journal of Guidance and Counseling, virtual reality is a type of exposure therapy, which means that the patient is intentionally confronted with the phobia. Many people avoid what they're scared of, so this successive exposure to the phobia reduces anxiety. Virtual reality can be administered in therapeutic settings, so it is proven to be more convenient, controlled, and cost-effective than imaginal exposure. In a scholarly article written about virtual reality exposure therapy being used to treat spider phobia versus traditional exposure therapy, written by Alexander Milov and colleagues from Stockholm University, it is detailed that in treating a phobia, therapists can recreate phobic stimuli and can manipulate key variables such as color, size, and movement. The intensity of the exposure can be adjusted based on the needs of the patient. One example of a phobia that can be treated using virtual reality exposure therapy is fear of flying. Dr. Giuseppe Riva wrote that if landing is what the person is scared of, then landing can be repeated as often as necessary without having to wait for the plane to take off, like in the real world. This exposure provides a real-life experience that is more emotionally engaging than imaginal exposure. A computer virtual reality exposure treatment program called No Fear Airlines exposes those with the fear of flying to images and sounds relating to their phobic fear, according to Daniel Campos from BMC Psychiatry. No Fear Airlines also includes a short screening process where the patient answers questions about their phobia and treatment protocol based on techniques that have proven to be successful in the past. Patients are exposed multiple times a week until it no longer bothers them. Alexander Milov also wrote about another example, fear of spiders. In a survey of 777 undergraduate students who scored high for fear of spiders, more than 80% wanted to use virtual reality exposure therapy for treatment. They were placed in multiple virtual environments, such as multiple areas of a house, rather than in a single area, and in the end were less likely to have a return of their fear following the treatment. Other successful examples of virtual reality being used to treat phobias are fear of heights and public speaking. Not only does virtual reality help patients cope with phobias, but it can also transform how people view themselves and others in terms of body image. Victoria Mountford from the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience at King's College of London details in a scholarly article that virtual reality can provide a social setting that can be replicated. These settings include places such as public transportation or the swimming pool. Replicating social settings allows researchers to determine the differences in views on body image based on the location. Mountford, along with other scientists, goes on to explain a concept called body image disturbance, or BID. In the virtual setting, if an avatar looks at someone, it can be interpreted in two different ways based on the amount of BID that the person who is being looked at has. Someone with a low BID who is confident and secure might think that the look was just a curious glance, while someone with a high BID who is insecure may have thoughts such as, they think I'm fat. The scholarly article informs readers and researchers that virtual reality produces similar levels of anxiety and body dissatisfaction as real life. The Public Library of Science published an article on their website that speaks about virtual reality being used to transform body image and to treat anorexia nervosa. According to the article, a study was done that asked participants to estimate their body size, including their shoulders, abdomen, and hips, and found that most people overestimated. After treatment, there was a decrease in overestimation because the virtual reality diminished the disturbed experience of body size. One tactic used in this study was the rubber hand illusion, RHI. RHI induces the feeling of believing that a fake body part, the rubber hand, is the patient's hand. This is done through the patient seeing a touch to the fake hand and feeling a touch to their own. The patient then connects the two and believes that they can feel the touch to the fake hand. After seeing the rubber hand, patients with anorexia nervosa were found to decrease the overestimation of their hand width. This is because those with anorexia nervosa tend to base the size of their body off of the most recently available visual input, according to the Public Library of Science. Finally, one of the most effective and common uses of virtual reality is the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. In a scholarly article, Lauren Seipel quotes Robert McClay, author of At War with PTSD, Battling Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder with Virtual Reality, and saying, quote, "The idea is to desensitize patients to their trauma and train them not to panic, all in a controlled environment," end quote. Christopher Wilson and Alessandro Soranzo, researchers from Teesside University and Sheffield Hallam University, respectively, state that it can be difficult to implement virtual reality exposure therapy for PTSD due to safety concerns. Wilson and Soranzo also detailed that in treating PTSD, therapists use a virtual replica of a war zone, complete with audio and haptic feedback. The scholarly article also explains that multimodal virtual reality allows the researcher to manipulate each input in the exposure so that they can understand the effect that each input has on the patient. According to her scholarly article, Lauren Seipel also says that patients can be coached to take on difficult challenges to make sure that they're not being overwhelmed, but that they are confronting the situation. In the simulation, the patient recites the story of the trauma and reflects on it while they're experiencing it. Talking through the trauma and experiencing it again tends to restore the patient's brain activity back to normal patterns. In a Health Daily Digest newspaper article written by Sonashki Chakravarti, readers are informed that the graded exposure therapy, the virtual reality treatment, exposes those diagnosed with PTSD to events that will trigger stress, but in a controlled environment so that their psychological responses can be measured in order to create an effective and personal treatment. Chakravarti also details that coping skills are instilled with those with PTSD with the help of training. According to the USC Institute for Creative Technology's website, a project being led by researchers Albert Rizzo and Arno Harthold is exploring the use of virtual reality treatment of PTSD. This project uses scenarios such as Afghan and Iraqi cities, along with desert road environments and scenarios relevant to combat medics. These scenarios are not only visual, but also include 3D audio, vibrations, and smells. Rizzo, who is also the creator of Virtual Iraq and Virtual Afghanistan, and director for medical virtual reality at USC, says, quote, "If you model something in virtual reality and you do a halfway decent job with it, and somebody's interacting in that space, pretty much similar areas of the brain light up. You can fool the brain. It doesn't have to be an exact replica of reality for people to suspend belief and interact with digital content as if it's the real thing," end quote. In an interview conducted by Christina Couch, found on the PBS website, Tommy Furlong, who was an infantry officer in Afghanistan for the Marine Corps in 2010, speaks about virtual reality treatment and saying, quote, "It brings back that muscle memory. You get right back into that mode. You put on the headphones and start hearing that radio chatter, and it just comes right back to you," end quote. The use of virtual reality treatment for PTSD has shown positive effects and is one of the most common uses of virtual reality in psychology. Over the course of the speech, I've informed you of the ways that virtual reality can be used in psychology to increase the human mind's understanding of perception, such as coping with phobias, transforming body image, and treating PTSD. To conclude, I will review each of these uses briefly. Virtual reality exposure therapy forces a patient to be face-to-face with their phobia, whether it be of flying or of spiders, so that they can reduce their anxiety levels. Virtual reality also allows the patient to view their body in the way they actually appear, as opposed to in a distorted fashion. Finally, in the most common use of virtual reality treatment of PTSD, patients can relive experiences that triggered them so that they can learn how to cope with the stress. Next time that you see people testing virtual reality goggles and helmets near you to play video games, I hope that you will remember that there is much more to virtual reality, such as its uses in psychology.